When dawn brushes the window and uncertainty rests on your chest, you exhale and admit you do not need conclusions, only the one who holds them. Cool air slips through the curtain, and in that hush you recognize an all-knowing presence nearer than your pulse, steady as the sky. You honor the God who is refuge and counsel, who meets your questions with patience. Instead of rehearsing outcomes, you set down today's plans. Make room for stillness and listen for a whisper kinder than your fears. You remember that wisdom is not a puzzle to solve, but a person to trust, and you let that thought calm your breathing. So James 1:5, asking admits your limits and trusts his generosity. He does not scold, he generously guides. So what burden do you entrust this morning? The decision you keep revisiting, the conversation you dread, the desire you hardly dare to name. What if your next steps begin by resting your heart in his keeping? Now, as your heart grows still, we step into honest uncertainty, all-knowing presence, surrendered questions, listening stillness, trusting wisdom, and guided steps. You stand at the lip of morning like a traveler reading a weathered map, noticing where the ink fades and paths dissolve into mist. You feel the pull to script every scene. Yet something kinder invites you to acknowledge the H of not knowing and to breathe as if the new light were medicine. You speak the truth you usually outrun. You do not know what noon will bring. You cannot choreograph how others will respond. And you cannot hold the horizon in two hands. Naming this does not weaken you. It frees you from pretending. You begin by telling God the unedited version, the outcome you crave, the risk that keeps pricking your ribs, the timing you wish you could command. Your voice stays plain, like a sparrow's line of song at first light, and your lungs learn to match that simple courage. With each exhale you set down a stone, one fear, one control, one demand, and with each inhale you receive something quieter: composure, clear focus, a readiness to notice guidance when it comes. You are not trying to solve the day in your head. You are consenting to be carried through it. You picture your inner life as a shoreline just after storm, driftwood everywhere, foam still hissing at the edges. You would like the beach cleaned in a moment, but you choose a truer path. You walk slow. You pick up what can be lifted, and you let the tide bear off what is not yours to manage. You speak out loud the sentence you need today. Here is what you feel. Here is what you can do next. You do not decorate it, you let it be real. Reality is the doorway grace uses. Psalm 61:2. From the end of the earth I call to you when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. In weakness you are led, not left. Lifted higher, you do not escape your landscape. You see it from steadier ground. Let this picture settle you, a boulder warming under sunrise, a place just above the waves where footing holds. You choose that rock by choosing to tell the truth and to breathe until your body remembers safety. Place your hand over your chest and count a slow 4 on the inhale, a gentle 6 on the release. While you count, let a quiet sentence anchor you. And you are here. As you repeat it, notice how your posture lengthens, how thought knots loosen, and how the urge to fix everything softens. You begin to sense the next faithful piece of the day, small enough to take without panic. You also bless your limits. You affirm that only God is infinite, and you let that reality be relief rather than shame. You are allowed to be finite, to ask to wait, to move one small piece at a time. You are allowed to say, "You do not know yet," without letting that sentence become a verdict on your worth. Insight often arrives like sunrise, not a lightning strike. You face the east and give it minutes to rise. So you enter this day honest and unafraid of lack. You do not chase certainty, you cultivate attention. You listen for subtle prompts, an unexpected idea, a remembered promise, a door that fits your hand. When the inner ache whistles again, you pause before you rush, name what throbs, and breathe like someone who believes the next thing will be enough. This is how courage feels at daybreak, not loud, not showy, but steady as a path you can actually walk. You lean into morning like a question leaning toward a face that understands. You feel the pull to interrogate the day, yet a wiser current carries you toward simple awareness. God already knows. Before your thoughts arrange themselves, He has read their direction. Before the calendar crowds you, He has walked its corridors. You picture a lantern moving ahead through fog, not erasing the weather but revealing a path wide enough for footsteps. You relax your shoulders, not because mysteries shrink, but because omniscience is not distant math. It is nearness with insight. The one who numbers stars understands your patterns, your hesitations, your hopes, and your limits. Nothing surprises Him, and nothing is too small to matter. You tell Him what you cannot decode, and you confess the urge to make comprehension your savior. Then you exchange that burden for companionship. Answers can arrive later. Presence is immediate. You imagine the way seabirds read wind you cannot see, and you borrow their ease. You remember that knowing everything is not your assignment. Abiding with the knower is. So you ask for light the way you ask for daily bread. Sufficient, timely, tender. You let your inner pace match the quiet stride of a shepherd who never rushes yet never arrives late. You rest your attention on His character, faithful, wise, steady, and your breathing evens out. The Psalm 139 1-3. O Lordy, You have searched me and known me. You discern my thoughts from afar, and are acquainted with all my ways. You live before an attentive gaze that reads you without shaming you. You are fully seen, fully understood, and still invited closer. From that assurance, you pray differently. You stop demanding a map and begin asking for markers. Give the sign I need next, you whisper in your heart, and make me quick to recognize it. You ask for alignment between your inner compass and His counsel. You ask to be protected from counterfeit clarity, ideas that look shiny but pull you away from goodness. You ask for humility to revisit a decision if new light arrives. You hold your conclusions loosely enough that God can revise them without a fight. This is not passivity, it is intelligent dependence. The same hand that sustains galaxies can arrange appointments, craft timing, and open doors that actually fit your calling. You practice watchfulness. You pay attention to small confirmations, a verse resurfacing, a conversation that echoes your prayer, an opportunity that matches who you are becoming, a closed door that spares you from a costly detour. You keep a page open to jot these threads, not to hoard omens, but to remember that guidance often comes as a braided cord, not a trumpet blast. When fear shouts, you answer with truth you have recorded. When analysis loops, You interrupt it with a sentence strong enough to hold you. You know this road, and you are with me on it. You let that line settle like dew over a field, softening hard ground. You move into the day with a scholar's curiosity and a child's confidence. You ask good questions, you listen more than you argue, and you refuse to measure your value by the speed of your conclusions. You welcome interruptions as possible signals rather than inconveniences. You treat setbacks as information, not condemnation. You release the pressure to dazzle anyone with certainty and aim instead to be faithful with clarity as it is given. Under an all-knowing gaze, you do not need to perform expertise. You can walk in honest light, step by step, trusting that the mind that designed oceans can also guide you through this hour's tide. And if evening arrives with puzzles still unsolved, you will not call the day a failure. You will call it accompanied. You gather your questions like shells after night tide. Some smooth, some jagged, and you choose not to clutch them, but to place them into hands wiser than your own. You picture a small altar near the window where first light arrives. Upon it you set the decisions you cannot untangle, the timelines you cannot force, the outcomes you cannot guarantee. You breathe as if releasing string after string from a tangled kite, and feel the pull lessen. You tell God plainly what confuses you, and then, instead of building a courtroom to argue your case, you build a cradle where trust can rest. You let today be shaped by reliance more than by mastery, by receptivity more than by strain. You admit that your drive to resolve everything is often a shield against vulnerability. You prefer answers because they feel like armor, yet you begin to see that surrender is sturdier protection. When you loosen your grip, your mind regains margin, your body drops its unnecessary guard, and your attention returns to what is actually yours to steward. You hand back what belongs to His jurisdiction, other people's responses, unseen timing, hidden variables. You keep what is yours: integrity, diligence, compassion, and small obedient steps. You do not discard inquiry, you relocate it. Your questions no longer occupy the throne. They take a seat in the waiting room where wisdom calls them in at the right hour. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. He will make straight your paths. Dependence is not a downgrade from intelligence. It is intelligence submitted to higher counsel. Straight paths do not mean easy corridors. They mean aligned steps through real terrain. Now you practice with your body what your heart is choosing. You unclench your jaw, soften your shoulders, and open your palms. You breathe a quiet prayer with your inhales and releases. Into your care, guide my next. You imagine placing each puzzle piece onto a river that knows its way to the sea, and you resist chasing it downstream. You let the current work while you attend to your part of the shore. When an old anxiety hurries back, you do not argue it into silence. You redirect it toward the altar again, like returning a bird to the branch it trusts. You also use wise tools. You write 2 columns, my portion and your province. Into the first you place the actions you can take today. Make the call. Prepare the document. Show kindness. Ask a clarifying question. Into the second you place the variables you cannot manage. How you will be received. Unforeseen delays, the wider ripple of your choice. You read the first list aloud and step into it. You bless the second list and hand it back. You discover that clarity often blooms after you move faithfully with the part you already know. Surrender reorders your listening. Instead of demanding full explanations, you begin to ask for aids suited to the hour: a nudge, a confirmation, a boundary, a redirection. You learn to tolerate partial clarity without panic. You remember how manna arrived. Enough for the day, not a warehouse for a month. And you accept that pattern as care, not scarcity. You do not call patience failure, you call it alignment. You refuse to mythologize urgency. You choose steadiness that lasts longer than adrenaline. And when weariness whispers that relinquishment is risky, you answer with a truer story: your life has never been secure because you held every variable. Your life has been carried because an unhurried God held you. So you walk forward with questions placed in safekeeping, mind lighter, hands available. If an answer is needed, it will arrive with the hour. If not, you will still be accompanied. Either way, you are no longer alone in the solving. You are linked to the one who sees the whole pattern and tends each thread with care. Morning hush meets your open attention, and you treat the early hour like a chapel where clutter is cleared and voice can be recognized. The city stretches, kettles hum, yet beneath ordinary sounds you choose a slower interior pace. You set the phone face down. You breathe as if the air itself were gentle instruction, and you consent to this quiet as a doorway rather than a delay. Silence does not mean absence, it means space for communion. You release the reflex to fill every gap with commentary. You allow your questions to settle like snow, so that footprints of direction can appear. What you seek is not theatrics, but a traceable nudge, a steadying word, a path wide enough for faithful steps. You learn that listening is not passive. It is disciplined attention anchored to God's character. You focus your gaze on His nearness, His reliability, His wise timing, and you let those realities tune your inner instruments. The mind that raced all night begins to slow. The heart that flinched at every uncertainty finds rhythm again. You give this practice minutes that feel costly, because you want discernment more than adrenaline. You refuse to bargain for fireworks. You would rather be guided than dazzled. In this posture, you grow fluent in subtlety, the soft alignment of motives, the clean edge of a boundary, the gentle check that prevents a misstep. Say Isaiah 13:5, in returning and rest you are saved, in quietness and trust you find strength. Turning back is not regression, it is recalibration toward the source. Rest is not laziness, it is reliance that restores capacity. Now you employ small, practical habits that train hearing. You sit with one short line of scripture and let it echo until a phrase glows. You shape breath prayers that fit your day. Here I am. On the inhale, led me. On the release, and you repeat them until posture follows petition. You ask 3 simple questions. What is God showing about His character right now? What is the next faithful action within reach? What weight needs to be placed back into His hands? You keep paper nearby to empty the mind of logistics that try to hijack attention, capturing them for later so they stop shouting. You allow the room to be ordinary. You do not require perfection to practice presence. When distraction returns, you handle it kindly. You notice, you name, you set it aside without scolding yourself. Like watching a cloud cross the sunrise, you let the thought drift without chasing it. If agitation spikes, you pause and adjust your body, lengthen the spine, soften the jaw, unclench the hands. You remember that a calm nervous system hears nuance quicker than a braced one. If an image surfaces, a door closing, a path opening, a person's name, you carry it back to God and ask for confirmation rather than sprinting ahead. Reverence replaces rush. You also test impressions with wise filters. Does this leading harmonize with Scripture's shape of love? Does it produce fruit consistent with Christ's way? Patience, kindness, self-control. Does its tone carry mercy rather than contempt? Direction that bullies rarely bears the mark of heaven. Counsel that steadies usually does. You check timing. Is this for today or for after additional counsel? You ask to be protected from impulses disguised as urgency. Peace that can survive pressure matters more than a thrill that burns out by lunchtime. Out of this listening, you receive something modest and clear enough to practice. Send a note of encouragement. Prepare thoroughly. Decline a misaligned invitation. Wait one more day. Begin the unglamorous task that supports the bigger vision. You take that step without demanding full visibility. You carry the quiet with you like a lamp cut from wind. Your composure becomes a small sanctuary for others, and your attention keeps you available to fresh direction. In this way, you move through the morning, not as a detective chasing clues, but as a companion walking with the guide. What you could not force by analysis begins to unfold under attentive calm, preparing you to trust the wisdom that meets you next. You step from silence into choice, aware of how easily your mind builds mazes. The urge to examine every angle promises safety yet steals momentum. Like rowing hard while the boat stays tied to the pier, you loosen the knot. You remind yourself that divine counsel is not a riddle to decode, but a road to travel, and a path favors feet. You let yesterday's mental loops drift out with the tide, and accept that clarity grows as you move. You decide to believe that the one who sees the whole path can keep you from cliffs while you take the next faithful stretch. You do not despise thought, you direct it. Reflection becomes a servant of purpose rather than a tyrant that exhausts you. You practice choosing from rooted principles instead of fluctuating moods. You aim for faithfulness over flawlessness, alignment over applause. You name the values that have been forming in you: truthfulness, kindness, diligence, courage. And you hold your options against them like leaves to light. When a path harmonizes with those foundations, you call it good enough to begin. You do not wait for 100% certainty. You let reasonable clarity, wise input, and inner composure reach a threshold that says, start. Wind does not fill a moored sail. You raise canvas and let movement teach you finer adjustments. You choose timing that favors obedience rather than perfectionism, and you trust that course. Corrections are easier in motion than at a standstill. You adopt a gentle ritual for decisions. You ask, what choice reflects love for God and neighbor in this hour? You define one concrete action, small enough to do within the morning. Then you set a time boundary to prevent spirals. You picture a gate you will walk through at a set moment, and you prepare an exit ramp in case new information arrives. You speak out loud the sentence that releases pressure. This is today's faithful attempt. You refuse to let imagined critics sit at the table. You welcome wise counsel from people who actually steward your well-being, and you discount the noise of spectators. You let your face turn toward the task the way a sunflower turns toward sun, quietly, steadily, without apology. After you choose, you guard your heart from second, guessing that masquerades as prudence. You bless the decision you made with the light you had, and you step into it fully. If fresh light appears, you revise without drama. Correction is not humiliation, but guidance. You keep a short memory for harmless missteps and a long memory for the times trust carried you farther than certainty ever did. When anxious thoughts return to relitigate the choice, you repeat a wiser refrain. You and the Lord decided this at dawn. Now walk it. You treat interruptions as data, not condemnation. You respond, adapt, and continue. Confidence, for you, is not noise. It is quiet steadiness. It is the river's persistence through stone, not a torrent that floods and fades. It wears humility like good boots and leaves room for learning. It keeps your center soft toward people and firm toward purpose. It does not confuse kindness with capitulation or courage with stubbornness. It hears the small yes that matches this hour and gives it your best. In this way, you discover that trusting wisdom is less about dramatic leaps and more about sturdy steps that, taken consistently, create a life of holy traction. You walk on, less entangled in calculations and more available to grace, ready for the final gift of the morning. Being led, you stand at the threshold and sense the day like a meadow opening, a thin ribbon of path glistening with dew. Visible not in full, but in faithful segments, you remember that guidance usually arrives at walking speed, so you choose a pace that honors wisdom rather than adrenaline. You gather what you have. Today's clarity, yesterday's lessons, a calm breath, and you let them become sandals for the road. Instead of demanding the panorama, you welcome a sequence, one conversation, one task, one act of kindness. You refuse to be bullied by the feeling that everything must be finished before breakfast. You aim to be faithful at 9, available at noon, teachable by evening. You greet the world as a steward, not a controller, and you step forward with composure that comes from being accompanied. You shape a simple plan that leaves room for holy interruption. You choose one priority that serves your calling and block time to do it well. You carry a quiet sentence into meetings and messages. Guide me through this moment. And you let that line steady your tone. You decline noise that scatters your attention, and you welcome input that sharpens aim. You treat delay as potential alignment rather than disaster. When a door opens that matches your boundaries and values, you walk through it without theatrics. When a door closes, you do not kick it. You knock elsewhere with the same courage. You remember that fruit grows in seasons, not seconds, and you grant yourself the mercy of process. Psalm 119, 1 and 5. Your word is a lamp to your feet and a light to your path. A lamp does not light the whole valley. It brightens the next stretch so you can move now. Illumination that stays close keeps you close to the giver, which is safer than running ahead with guesses. You adopt a rhythm that keeps your inner instruments tuned. Before each decision, you pause for 2 breaths and ask, what honors God and neighbor here? After each step, you listen for confirmation or correction. grateful that course adjustments are signs of care. You schedule courage in small doses. Make the call, write the note, send the proposal, set the boundary. You do ordinary work with reverence. Clean lines, honest math, promises kept. And you let excellence be your quiet signature. When anxiety resurfaces, you treat it as a cue to return to breath and prayer, not as a verdict on your direction. You refuse counterfeit urgency. You choose pace over frenzy, progress over theatrics. You allow love to direct movement. Guidance is never merely about efficiency. It is about becoming a person who leaves rooms better than you found them. So you speak truth with tenderness. You listen without composing your reply, and you extend patience where others are learning what you have already learned. You protect your yes so it can mean something, and you let your no be clear enough to guard what matters. You offer thanks when help arrives and give credit generously. You build today like a craftsman. Measured cuts, steady hands, attention to grain, trusting that the structure will hold because it was built on the right angle's integrity, compassion, courage, restraint. By afternoon, you may still have unresolved pieces, but you will not measure the day by neatness. You will measure it by alignment. You will close the loop you can, leave the rest with God, and walk home under a sky that remembers your name. If a new path appears tomorrow, you will receive it like a gift rather than a threat. If the way continues as expected, you will keep your stride and your gentleness. Answers can wait because you walk with the one who knows them. This is how guided steps feel light for now, grace for detours, strength for the climb, and a steady hand on your shoulder until evening folds the field and you rest easy, still carried. You wake to a quiet invitation, release the urge to master every outcome, and let yourself be led. You name one concern and place it back into God's keeping. Then you choose one faithful action and do it with care. You keep a breath prayer near your lips. Here I am, lead me. And you let that line shape your tone, your choices, your pace. You look for small confirmations, receive correction without shame, and allow kindness to steer your influence. You end the morning whispering thanks for light enough to walk and love enough to share. Now settle into a hush